Hey guys, Emily Muchanti here. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for watching. And today we are going to talk about 4 really important components of your instruction. For each instructional session that you have with intervention, how can you maximize that session to make sure that you are giving those students everything that they need? And so we're going to talk about 4 important things today. But first, remember to like, subscribe, and share. And by all means, leave me a comment. Email me, readingdiva06@gmail.com, and let's chat about what is happening in your intervention program. Okay, so today we're talking about what can we do with every single instructional session that we have with our intervention kids to make sure that we are actually maximizing their growth opportunities. And the first one that I want to talk to you about is lesson design. The design of the lesson that you are going to deliver is incredibly important. And truly, there is a science to this. Now, new interventionists might really be challenged with how to do this, which is why I always go back to saying that interventionists should not be writing every single lesson plan for all of their groups. You don't have the time for it. But more importantly, you really have to make sure that you are hitting all of the components within that lesson to maximize the growth of that student. So, what you want to do instead is make sure that you are finding really reliable evidence-based products that are going to maximize the design of that lesson. So, for example, some of the things that we are looking at in lesson design. Are there clear objectives? Do we know exactly what each lesson is supposed to deliver? Is there a structured sequence to the lesson? Are we starting with the simple concept and moving to the more complex? Is there scaffolding involved for making sure that we know how to support those kids that might still need additional additions to that instruction? So I also like to look to see, is a lesson design interactive? Remember that the basis of explicit instruction is that it is very interactive. We know that we follow the I do, we do, you do method of delivery, that gradual release of responsibility. But within the I do, please do not think that that is all teacher talk, where students are just sitting and listening. No, 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 no. Every single stage within that lesson design should be interactive. If the teacher is saying something, we should be eliciting choral responses or some type of feedback. There is always interaction with our students. Now, is this lesson also somewhat multisensory? We want to engage the students at all levels with multisensory instruction. And I know that the research is sort of out on this, but from my perspective, the more that we can engage our students, the more I can make sure that we are dealing with any type of attention issues. That multisensory instruction is going to keep our students highly engaged, which means they're going to get more out of the lesson. Is there also corrective feedback opportunities? Are we providing the additional instruction when students are struggling or doing something incorrectly so that we can give that corrective feedback? Are we checking for understanding? We should be doing this frequently within the lesson. Are there opportunities also for spiral review? If we left a lesson on a Monday, are we coming back on that Tuesday and somewhat picking up the spiral review of that? We want to have those opportunities with these types of structures within our lesson. It's one of the things I love about the Phonics Lesson Library. The lesson design is absolutely structured in this way. There is a science to it. It is following explicit design. So no matter what resource you're using, you want to evaluate the lesson design to make sure that it is including all of those additional components. Sometimes these lessons can be very scripted, which is fine. And I'm going to make a confession to you. I was not a big fan 15 years ago of scripted instructional delivery. Scripted programs got a really bad rap until I realized something pretty quickly. The script was there to teach me, as the deliverer of the lesson, the routine and that lesson design that needed to be implemented. Once I understood the main components of those things, I was able to add some of my own flair to it. So I don't want you to think that when you have a scripted lesson that you have to actually be reading everything. At the beginning, when you are picking these up with a new resource, you probably are reading it. And it might feel a little bit robotic. It might feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's to be expected. Once you start to internalize those particular routines and frameworks of that lesson, you will see that it's going to feel far more natural. The second component of this instructional success and delivery really comes back to something I just mentioned, and that is the instructional routine. Every lesson that we deliver to our students in small groups, or even in our classes for that matter, should have some instructional routines. Now, you know how valuable routines are in your classes, right? Routines such as, how do we line up? How do we give our lunch count? How do we clean up at the end of the day? This doesn't change when we're talking about the actual delivery of our instruction. There should be instructional routines inside of these sessions that we have. And a few things that I really think are important to point out about routines. When we have instructional routines, we know how we are going to elicit responses. We know how we're going to ask our students to provide some sort of feedback. Not only are we aware of what that looks like, but our students are aware. And there's no guesswork. It becomes second nature. And so that it's almost like, you know how fluency, I'm going to digress here, but this is important. You know how there's only so much brain energy to dedicate to any one task, like we talk about in fluency? This is exactly the same with our instructional routines. When we can automatize some of our instructional routines, students are not left to wonder and guess, and we are able to increase engagement and increase learning. So we definitely want to include all these instructional routines wherever appropriate. And our lessons, our curriculum or resources that are following certain structures are going to provide this for us. And that's fantastic. Now, you can do this yourself. Something as simple as choral reading. I always had a routine for choral reading with my students. If I knew that there was something that we were going to read together, I trained them. And I would say something like, okay, we're going to read this section together. Put your finger on the first word. Ready, begin. And if the students were all off in their voices and I had, somebody going too fast, I would say, whoa, 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 stop. One voice. Do it again. 1, 2, 3. And we always knew. So there was no guesswork in how to proceed with that particular routine. So these routines can also involve our warm-ups in our lesson. Are we coming in and reviewing some sort of a skill? So for example, within a number of my groups that I would meet with, our morning routine was always the repeated reading time. We would start by whisper reading something that was read the day before, part of our routine. And then we would jump into whatever that next part of that structured lesson was. But the important part here is to remember that these routines are really meant to lighten the cognitive load for you and your students. And a good resource is going to include those instructional routines. Once you have embedded those routines into your toolkit, then you can utilize those throughout your grade levels and your groups, and if you're a classroom teacher, in the rest of your classroom. So we absolutely want to do this. This also helps to build confidence in our students, and it leaves out all of the guesswork. All right, the third important component of really successful instruction is knowledge of the teacher. Our teachers are the most important variable in any type of instruction that you are giving, whether it is classroom, intervention, doesn't matter, okay? The knowledge of the teacher is absolutely essential. So, as a good interventionist, you want to continue to add to your knowledge. And a good resource that you are using is going to help build your knowledge. Once your knowledge is continuing to improve, the other part of that teacher variable that is so important is the engagement that the teacher can bring to whatever lesson. Now, I know that there are a number of resources out there, particularly when we align to structured literacy, that are very explicit and direct, that can feel very dry, right? Some of my favorite curriculums, I love Phonics Lesson Library, of course, but I also love Phonics for Reading, Rewards, all of these. And when we're just getting started, we're not really sure what those particular routines may be. We're seeming very robotic. But once the teacher can internalize that and then can increase their own excitement and engagement and sell it to the kids, that is where the real magic is. We know the instruction, the design of the lesson, okay? The design of the instruction very much follows a scientific protocol, if you will. But we can't forget the art of the lesson, the delivery of the lesson. And that really comes from the teacher. And every teacher's a little different. Every teacher's personality is a little bit different. So give yourself permission to bring your own flair and personality and enjoyment, I hope, into that lesson to increase the engagement. Because if we've got a really good lesson design, we've got really good instructional routines, and we can add to the engagement with the flair of the teacher, you are setting up a perfect recipe for success. And then the final component that I want to talk to you about, and you know what? I don't think we talk enough about this except to complain, and that is time. Time, in consistent time to do the work that needs to be done. So if one of your challenges in your intervention program is that you only get to see your kids once or twice a week, and sometimes the teachers won't send them, we have got to make sure that you are finding a schedule that is within your school that your teachers and you can follow, and that everybody respects the boundaries of those times. We cannot make growth with the most struggling kids if we don't have time with them, time within a really good resource and with those routines and with that engaged teacher. So don't forget the value of time. We've got to protect it. It's super important. Now, I do want to share one little teaser. I've been diving into the Phonics Lesson Library 1.0, which was 95% Group's first resource that they created. And apparently it's coming upon its 15 years, and it is going into a major revision. And so the main core components of Phonics Lesson Library, the instruction is the same, but with some really added exciting opportunities and that are going to benefit you and your kids. And so I do want to drop a link down below that if you are interested in attending the PLL 2.0 webinar, that is going to be held on January 28th. It's a Tuesday. 7:30 Eastern time, and that is going to introduce and show you what some of these exciting changes are. Once we have that information, I'm going to dive in because I want to know more, and I'm also going to help you to see what some of those benefits are, and we'll talk about if there's anything that you're still wishing to see. We would love to talk about that as well, but I would definitely encourage you to put that on the calendar. Even if you can't attend live, register for that. You should be able to get a recording, which is what I'm going to be doing, so that you can then dive into that at a later time. Okay, so I just want to remind you 4 really important aspects to your instructional success with your students. And we want to make sure that we are cognizant of all of those. Number one being the lesson design, finding great resources that follow that important lesson design, the instructional routines, so that we are not leaving any guesswork within our routine of that time, the teacher knowledge and engagement, and finally, time. Time to do the important work because we know how important this work is. And as always, my friends, down below in the show note, there are going to be a lot of links if you're interested in learning more from me in my MTSS framework course. I hope that you will check that out. You can visit emilymuchanti.com. You are welcome to schedule a Calendly link call with me so that we can chat via Zoom, or just email me. I love to chat with you. Love to hear what you're doing. All right. If you have any questions, reach out, leave me a comment. Thank you for what you do, and bye for now.